There's a long run to the turn for the Classic. They use the whole stretch, and the field isn't that big. This one should be a fair test. American Pharaoh is where we have to start, and not just alphabetically. This colt stood up well to a very severe campaign without ever running a bad one, but only 2 of those efforts were good enough to give him a big shot here. On the plus side, he gets almost a point in weight for the older horses and figures to save ground on the lead. So if he does run back to his Derby or Haskell, he'll be very tough to beat. And the last time he got a couple of months off was into the Haskell. On the other hand, he's coming to the end of a long, arduous campaign, and he's run more figures that won't win this than will. Overall, Baffert's horses haven't run so great in the Breeders' Cup, and quite a few of the ones that did were 2-year-olds. It's worth noting that American Pharaoh is his only entrant in this year's races. We're not going to take a position against American Pharaoh, but we wouldn't take a short price on him either. Beholder is trained by Richard Mandela, who is great at pointing a horse for a race. But that is not the situation now, as she had been running all year without a real break. This mare's race 2 back was gigantic, and if she runs it again, she has a good shot here. But she has never put 2 top efforts close together. Her other figures aren't nearly good enough, and we say that even granting that she could have run faster in her last. This time, Beholder is at the end of a long campaign, and we think the fever she ran is an indication it took something out of her. That aside, she was treated with antibiotics, which themselves can take something out of a horse. We will not be using Beholder. Frosted ran a big one with the addition of Lasix as a 2-year-old and broke through in the wood after a throat operation. This colt has been very solid since, has good timing into this, and gets enough weight to make him a factor on his best. By this point, we should have a good idea how McLaughlin's horses are running and whether to use Frosted or not. Glen Eagles tries dirt here. He's way too slow, and he has a grass pedigree. Honor Code has always been an erratic, ouchy horse with a history of needing time after big efforts. His efforts in the Met Mile and Whitney were huge, and it's not surprising he bounced last time, especially in the slop. He might snap right back off what effectively is an 0-2X pattern, but he's now also at the end of a long campaign. As with American Pharaoh, we're not going to take a firm position against Honor Code, but it's worth repeating. When older horses look like they might be tailing off going into the Breeders' Cup, they usually are. Keen Ice has never gone back, by which we mean bounced, with every race at least as good as the one before it. His last was not only a big figure, but a big jump, and Romans was wise to give him time since. Roman's horses have been running well in Kentucky, and this one is fast enough to use at a price, but tough to have confidence in since he has just the one big effort, and the leap might have taken something out of him. Smooth Roller obviously has issues that delayed his career. There's a good chance he'll bounce off the top in his last, but even if he doesn't, he would have to improve a great deal to be relevant. Tonalist has one of the most amazing sheets you will ever see. He's run 14 times and never bounced. And contrary to popular belief, he hasn't done it just at Belmont. He's done it everywhere he's run, including Santa Anita last year, where he was one of the few New York dirt horses to ship in and run their race. This horse has a lot of big figures, always runs his race, and is trained by a guy whose horses run well at the Breeders' Cup. Tonalist is by far the most likely horse to run well in the Classic and the horse to beat. 2 things we know about the Classic. Tonalist will be on every one of our tickets, and Beholder on none. We're not going to toss American Pharaoh, but we have our doubts he will show up. The only other ones to consider are Frosted, Honor Code, and Keen Ice, but basically, we like Tonalist.